The rain hammered the windshield like fists of regret as Dylan gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white against the fading dashboard glow of his beat-up Ford pickup. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered to the empty cab, the words dissolving into the storm's roar. His foot hovering over the gas pedal on the edge of the old railroad bridge outside Elmwood, Ohio, 30 feet above the churning Scioto River that had swallowed so many secrets before. But then his phone buzzed. A notification from a world he thought he'd buried. Ethan's online. Message him, and in that electric hesitation, Dylan's heart cracked open, pulling him back from the brink. Because loving someone, even in silence, meant one more breath, one more lie, until the truth clawed its way out. Dylan slammed on the brakes, tires screeching against wet gravel, the truck shuddering to a halt inches from the rusted guardrail. He buried his face in his hands, sobs racking his frame as lightning split the sky, illuminating the tattoo on his wrist, a tiny treble clef, inked in a rush of rebellion last summer, that no one in his small town knew about. Down below, the river raged like his father's unspoken grief, ever since Mom's cancer had eaten her away 3 years back, leaving Mark Harlan a ghost in his own home, nursing beers in the garage and pretending his only son wasn't slipping through his fingers like sand. Dylan wiped his eyes, the phone's glow a siren's call. Ethan's face stared back from the chat app, that crooked smile from their stolen afternoons in the abandoned mill, where whispers turned to kisses under the dust motes dancing in fractured light. "Hey, you okay?" The message read, simple as salvation. Dylan typed back, fingers trembling, "Not really." "Meet me?" He didn't wait for the reply before peeling out, the bridge receding in his rearview, because tonight, the secret that had saved him might just destroy everything. Elmwood wasn't the kind of place that forgave deviations. It was cornfields and church steeples, Friday night lights and gossip that stuck like humidity in July. Dylan had grown up in the shadow of the Harlan name. His dad, Mark, the stoic auto mechanic who'd fixed half the town's transmissions, the man who'd taught him to change oil before he could ride a bike. "Men don't cry, son," Mark would say, clapping a calloused hand on Dylan's shoulder after a scraped knee or a lost little league game, his voice gravelly from Marlboros and unspoken heartaches. But Dylan cried plenty, alone in his room with the door locked, scrolling through YouTube channels that dared to be what he couldn't out, proud, alive. It started as a whim junior year, a cheap webcam propped on his desk, the screen his confessional. Echoes of Silence, he named it, posting shaky covers of indie folk tunes, his voice raw and reedy, lyrics twisted to fit the ache of loving boys in a world that preached otherwise. Views trickled in 50, 100 comments from strangers calling him brave, beautiful, words that bloomed like forbidden flowers in his chest. He never showed his face at first, just shadows and strings, his guitar a shield. But the channel grew legs, hitting 1,000 subs by summer's end, fueled by a viral clip of him singing Hosier's "Take Me to Church," with tears cracking his falsetto. "This is for the ones we hide," he'd captioned it, anonymous enough to breathe, bold enough to burn. That's when Ethan found it. Ethan Caldwell, the new kid from Cincinnati, transferred in senior year with a leather jacket slung over one shoulder and eyes like smoked quartz that saw right through Dylan's faded flannels and downcast gaze. Ethan was out, blatantly, unapologetically, strutting the halls with rainbow pins on his backpack, quoting Audre Lorde in English class like it was scripture. "You're quieter than a library fire," he'd teased Dylan that first week, sliding into the seat beside him in AP Lit, their knees brushing under the desk in a spark that lingered like static. Dylan had laughed it off, cheeks flaming, but that night, alone with his laptop, he'd searched Ethan's name on a whim. Nothing at first, just soccer stats from his old school. Then, buried in the results, a collab video on some indie music forum, Ethan drumming wildly for a faceless vocalist. The voice, Dylan's voice. Holy shit, he'd breathed, heart jackhammering as Ethan commented below. Dude, whoever you are, your soul's on fire. Hit me up. The DMs started tentative. Love the Hosier cover. Saw you in Lit today, small world? Dylan panicked. Deleted the app. But sleep wouldn't come. By dawn, he'd replied, yeah, small and suffocating. That was the hook, the line sinking deep. Their first real meet was at the mill, a crumbling relic on the river's edge where teens went to smoke or screw or scream at the stars. Dylan arrived early, hood up against the chill, guitar slung like armor. Ethan was already there, silhouetted against graffiti-scarred walls, a joint dangling from his lips. Knew it was you, he said, exhaling smoke that curled like a question mark. That voice? Unmistakable. Like whiskey and rain. Dylan froze, exposed. But Ethan's grin disarmed him. Crooked, genuine, pulling him into a hug that smelled of patchouli and possibility. They talked for hours, Dylan's words tumbling freer than ever. About the channel, the fear, the way his dad's garage radio only played classic rock anthems that drowned out the queer anthems in his headphones. Ethan listened, really listened, his hand finding Dylan's in the dark, thumb tracing circles that said I see you without a word. From there, it snowballed. Stolen lunches in Ethan's beat-up Civic, parked behind the bleachers, where they'd share earbuds and mixtapes, Dylan crooning along softly, Ethan's head on his shoulder. Weekends at the city library an hour away, pretending to study but really devouring books on Stonewall and James Baldwin, Ethan's fingers interlacing with Dylan's under the table like a vow. The channel became their secret bridge. Dylan started showing glimpses, a hand wave, a shadowed profile, and Ethan guessed it once, off camera. His laughter bubbling through a duet of Wicked Game. Subscribers noticed. Is that your boyfriend? Goals. Comments like knives and nectar, sharpening Dylan's resolve even as paranoia gnawed. What if Dad found out? Mark, who still left pride flags in the junk drawer like relics from Mom's volunteer days, who hugged Dylan stiffly and asked about that girl from chem class, like it was scripture. Fall deepened, leaves turning the town to fire, and so did they. Their first kiss was in the mill again, after a channel milestone, 5,000 subs, with Dylan strumming a original, lyrics about bridges and breaths held too long. Ethan surged forward mid-chorus, lips crashing soft and sure, tasting of cherry chapstick and courage. I've wanted this since day one, he murmured against Dylan's mouth, hands framing his face like it was porcelain. They made love there on a threadbare blanket, clumsy and fervent, the rivers murmur their soundtrack, stars winking approval through cracked roof. Afterward, tangled and breathless, Ethan traced Dylan's tattoo. What's the story? Dylan hesitated, then spilled, inked on a dare from an online sub, a symbol of the music that saved him from the blade he'd once pressed to his thigh. Ethan's eyes darkened, pulling him closer. You're not alone anymore. Promise. But promises in Elmwood were fragile as frost. Winter barreled in with blizzards that trapped them indoors. Dylan's shifts at the diner stretching long. Ethan's soccer practices canceled. The channel hit 10,000. Collaborations pouring in. But Dylan pulled back. Fear coiling tighter. What if someone recognizes me? He'd whisper in bed at Ethan's cramped apartment above the laundromat, where they snuck away when Mark worked late. Ethan would soothe him with kisses, but doubt flickered. Ethan's ease in his skin, the way he flirted shamelessly at parties, while Dylan shrank from shadows. Then came the betrayal, sharp as shattered glass. It started with a party, the kind Elmwood threw to pretend it was progressive. Homecoming after-party at Jake Harlan's, Dylan's cousin, the golden boy quarterback with a Bible on his nightstand and homophobic jokes on his tongue. Ethan dragged Dylan there. Just one drink. Babe, show 'em we're unbreakable. Dylan relented, nursing a solo cup in the corner, Ethan's arm a warm anchor. But Jake cornered them by the keg, slurring, "Heard you got a little fairy channel, 'cause," singing about cocksucking or whatever. The room hushed, eyes like spotlights. Dylan paled, but Ethan laughed it off. Too loud, too sharp, clapping Jake's shoulder. "Nah, man." Dylan's straight edge. Folk tunes and shit. The lie landed like a slap, Ethan's gaze sliding away from Dylan's pleading eyes. Later, in the truck, Dylan confronted him, voice breaking. "Why'd you say that? We're us." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Timing, Dylan. Jake's connected scholarships, jobs. Didn't want to blow it up." Betrayal bloomed cold in Dylan's gut, the drive home silent as the snow piling high. The fracture widened like a fault line under Ohio clay. Dylan stopped answering texts, the channel dormant for weeks, his guitar gathering dust in the corner of his room. Mark noticed, of course, in that distant Harlan way, leaving pancakes on the counter with notes like "Rough Patch? Talk to me, kid." But talking meant unraveling, and Dylan was fraying at the edges. Shifts at the diner blurring into numbness. Smiles for truckers as fake as the pie. Ethan tried. Flowers left on the porch. Voicemails thick with apology. "I panicked. Babe, it wasn't me talking." But each one twisted the knife deeper. "Who were you then?" Dylan wanted to scream, deleting them all. The silence his new armor. Spring thaw brought no melt in Dylan's heart. He threw himself into finals, acing lit papers on Whitman while Ethan's seat in class stayed empty. Transferred out after a family emergency. Whispers said, "Back to Cincinnati." The rumor mill churned. Caldwell kid knocked up some girl? Nah. Caught with the drama teacher. Dylan tuned it out, but the void echoed. One night, scrolling mindlessly, he stumbled on a new channel, Echoes Unchained. Ethan's face filled the thumbnail, drumming furiously to a cover of Dylan's "Take Me to Church" caption, "For the voice that broke me open and shut me out." Subscribers flooded in, comments praising his raw edge, but Dylan saw the theft. His melodies, his pain, repackaged without credit. Rage surged. Hot and holy, he messaged from a burner. "That's mine. Give it back." Ethan's reply came swift. "Art evolves. You ghosted me, fair's fair." The accusation stung, but truth was a mirror Dylan avoided. He drove to the mill that midnight, rain sheeting down, finding Ethan there like a specter, drums silent. "You stole my soul," Dylan accused, voice cracking over thunder. Ethan stepped close, eyes stormy. "I stole nothing, you gave it freely, then snatched it back because one lie scared you stiff." They argued in the downpour, words whipping like wind, until Ethan grabbed his collar, pulling him into a kiss that tasted of salt and surrender. Dylan resisted, then melted, the dam breaking in sobs against Ethan's chest. "I'm terrified," he gasped. "Of Dad. Of this town. Of losing you for real." Ethan held him, fierce. "Then fight for us. Come out on the channel together." The idea terrified, thrilled. They tumbled into the blanket pile again, bodies a frantic apology, rain drumming rhythm to their reunion. But Elmwood doesn't yield easy. Word spread. Someone from the party had screenshotted Ethan's old lie, posted anonymously on the school forum. Caldwell's a fraud, denies his fag boyfriend to save face. Backlash hit like a nor'easter. Ethan's truck keyed with slurs. Dylan's locker papered with rainbows crossed out in red. Mark found the printout in Dylan's backpack, left carelessly after a late shift. He didn't confront. Not at first, just watched his son closer, the worry lines deepening like ruts in a dirt road. Dylan, emboldened by Ethan's fire, filmed a video that week, face full in frame, voice steady as he sang an original about bridges crossed and burns that heal. "This is me," he ended. "Hidden no more." Ethan duet live. Drums thundering support. Their hands linking on camera, digital coming out. Raw and real. Views exploded 50,000 overnight, but so did the hate. Trolls doxed Dylan's address. Calls flooding the house with slurs that made Mark's jaw clench. One evening, as Dylan edited footage in the kitchen, Mark loomed in the doorway, flannel sleeves rolled, grease still under his nails. "That you singing?" he asked, voice low, nodding at the laptop's glow. Dylan froze, heart plummeting. "Yeah, that. Me." Silence stretched, thick as motor oil. Then Mark slid into the chair opposite, rubbing his neck. Heard the commotion. Thought it was spam. He paused, eyes flicking to the screen where Dylan's younger self smiled in a family photo. Mom's arm around them both. "Who's the boy?" "The one drumming." Dylan's throat closed. He whispered, "Ethan. We love each other." Mark nodded slow, like absorbing a blow. "Love's a hell of a thing. Your mom, she knew, before I did. Said you'd find your way." Tears pricked Dylan's eyes, but Mark's face stayed stone, until it cracked just a fraction. "Proud of you, son. For singing it out." The confession hung fragile, a truce in the Harlan household. Mark started small, leaving the pride flag on the mantel, not the drawer, asking about Ethan over burgers at the diner, gruff but genuine. "He treat you right?" Dylan nodded, beaming, and for a breath, Elmwood felt navigable. The channel surged interviews from queer outlets in Columbus, merch drops with treble clefs in rainbow ink. Ethan moved back, crashing at Dylan's until they pooled for a tiny apartment downtown, walls papered in gig posters and each other's sketches. Summer bloomed sticky sweet, their love a bonfire, road trips to Pride in Cincy, where Ethan proposed under fireworks, not a ring, but a custom pic etched echoes forever. Dylan accepted with laughter and lust, bodies celebrating in a motel that smelled of chlorine and cheap sheets. Yet conflict simmered, betrayals echo. Ethan's channel, now unchained duets, overshadowed Dylan's, views skewed his way, sponsors sniffing his charisma. Dylan swallowed jealousy at first, but gigs pulled Ethan to Chicago, then Nashville, weekends stretching to weeks. "It's for us," Ethan promised over FaceTime, background buzzing with crowds. But Dylan's solo videos dipped, comments turning, "Where's the drummer? You sound flat alone." Isolation crept. Elmwood's whispers louder now. Harlan boys all flash. No fire. And Mark's health faltered. A cough that lingered post-flu. Doctor's visits dodged with "I'm fine, kid." The climax shattered on a humid August night. Dylan, fresh from a botched open mic where nerves choked his set, waited at the apartment for Ethan's return from a festival. The door swung open to Ethan, disheveled, lipstick smudged, not Dylan's shade, reeking of bourbon and someone else's cologne. "Just networking," Ethan slurred, but Dylan's gut twisted, spotting the hotel key in his pocket. Confrontation erupted. Accusations flying, Dylan hurling the guitar pick across the room. "You promised forever. Now it's fans and flings?" Ethan crumbled, confessing a one-night blur with a sound tech. "I was scared we'd fade." "Dylan, you're the anchor. I'm the sail drifting." The words eviscerated. Dylan's sobs a dirge as he packed a bag, fleeing to the mill, the river high from storms, mocking his resolve. Dawn broke gray over the Scioto, Dylan's boots squelching in mud as he paced the mill's threshold, bag slung heavy on his shoulder. The betrayal replayed in loops, Ethan's slurred excuses. The keys gleam like a Judas coin, each iteration carving deeper. He thought of live-streaming it all, a public autopsy of his heart. But the channel's light felt tainted now, a stage for stolen spotlights. Instead, he drove home to the Harlan house, where Mark was up early, tinkering in the garage, the clang of wrenches a metronome to his unrest. "Couldn't sleep," Mark grunted, wiping sweat from his brow. Not prying but present, the coffee pot steaming invitation. Dylan collapsed onto a stool, the words spilling unbidden. The fight, the infidelity, the way love could curdle into lies. Mark listened, tools idle, his silence a basin for the flood. When Dylan trailed off, cheeks wet, Mark cleared his throat. "Your mom cheated once, early on, when I was gone for that Detroit job. Thought it broke us, but she came clean, and we rebuilt. Brick by goddamn brick." Dylan stared, the revelation a jolt. "Mark? Vulnerable? Why tell me now?" Mark shrugged, eyes distant. "Because pain's the teacher, son. Doesn't make you weak, makes you whole." He pulled Dylan into a hug, awkward but ironclad, the first since childhood, smelling of oil and Old Spice. "Stay here tonight. We'll figure the rest." The days blurred into a haze of healing. Dylan crashed in his old room, walls still plastered with Metallica posters masking the queer lit hidden in drawers. The channel he mothballed, but music didn't. Late nights in the garage, Mark handing him tools between sets, their rhythm syncing like father-son jam sessions. Ethan texted apologies. "A torrent. I'm empty without you. Therapy. Vows, give me a shot." Dylan read them in the dead of night, thumb hovering over block, but Mark's words echoed rebuild. He replied once, "Not yet." "Earn it." Ethan did, in fragments, weekly calls, unprompted deposits for Dylan's rainy day, a demo track of their duet, stripped bare with lyrics of remorse. "I crossed the bridge you built. Now I'm swimming back." Elmwood shifted too, grudgingly. The school board, pressured by viral support for Dylan's channel, hosted a queer ally assembly, Mark in the front row, arms crossed but nodding along. Old Jake apologized over beers at the VFW. Sheepish. Was a dumbass kid. Congrats on the subs. Man. Dylan forgave. Not for Jake, but for the space it carved in his chest. Subscribers rallied. Echoes for Dylan trending. Donations pouring for a comeback tour. But Dylan demurred. Focusing inward. Journaling the mess. Therapy via Zoom with a counselor who got the rural queer grind. Ethan visited once. Tentative. Knocking on the Harlan door with wildflowers and wariness. Mark answered. Sizing him up. Heard him again. You're out. Ethan nodded. Solemn. Inside. Over pie at the kitchen table. They talked. Not passion, but plans. I want the messias, Ethan said. Hand outstretched. Dylan took it. Tentative. The spark flickering but not yet flame. Fall returned. Leaves a carpet of caution. And Dylan's channel relit. Slow burns. Vlogs from the garage with Mark guesting. Gruff harmonies on Springsteen that humanized the heartbreak. Views climbed organically. The authenticity a magnet. Ethan integrated. Cautious. Co-writing sessions at the mill. Boundaries like bumpers on a bowling lane. Their love rebuilt sideways, less fire. More forge. Nights tangled in Dylan's twin bed when Mark worked late. Whispers of futures beyond Elmwood. But the undercurrent pulled. Mark's cough worsened. X-rays revealing shadows in his lungs. The big C word hovering like a storm front. Just allergies, he waved off. But Dylan saw the yellowing in his eyes. The weight loss his flannels couldn't hide. The climax crested in November chill. Mark collapsing in the shop mid-oil change. Dylan's truck screeching to a halt as the call came. Your dad's at mercy. Hurry. The ER was fluorescent hell. Beeps and bleach. Mark pale under tubes. Whispering. Tell Ethan. Good kid. Dylan gripped his hand. Ethan arriving windblown from practice. Collapsing into the chair beside. They held vigil through the night. Mark stabilizing but frail. The diagnosis terminal mesothelioma from garage fumes. Irony bitter as chemo. In the waiting room, Ethan pulled Dylan close. We're in this. All of it. The words anchored. Their kiss salt-streaked. Pact renewed in crisis. Mark rallied enough for discharge. Home hospice turning the Harlan house to a cocoon of care. Dylan balanced it all, diner shifts trimmed. Channel collabs paused. Ethan stepping up with meals and meds. His drums repurposed for bedside serenades. One evening, as snow dusted the windows, Mark beckoned them to his recliner. The channel, he rasped. Laptop balanced precarious. Show me the one that started it. Dylan hesitated, then cued the first video, faceless. Raw. Take me to church, echoing the room. Mark watched, transfixed. Tears carving tracks down stubbled cheeks as Dylan's voice swelled. Ethan's shadow drumbeat sinking in memory. When it ended, Mark clutched Dylan's hand. You were always singing, son. Even when I was deaf. He turned to Ethan, voice cracking. Love him fierce. That's the music that matters. The revelation broke them open. Mark sobbing openly, the stoic facade crumbling to dust. Dylan folding into his dad's lap like a child. Ethan bridging them with arms wide. It was the moment the world saw later. A clip Dylan posted with permission. 3 generations of Harlan healing. Captioned from silence to song. Views shattered records. But the real climax was private, the forgiveness, the fierce hold on fragile time. Mark lingered through Christmas. A twinkling tree in the living room with rainbow ornaments Mom would have loved. His last words to Dylan over eggnog. Don't hide your light, kid. Burn bright, for her, for us. Winter gripped Elmwood in iron. The snow a shroud over Mark's grave come January. The plot beside Mom's under the crooked oak in St. Mary's Cemetery. The funeral was a quiet affair. Townsfolk in black. Whispers of good man. Harlan mingling with casseroles on the porch. Dylan stood graveside in his dad's old wool coat. Too big but warm. Ethan a steady flank. Hand in the small of his back like an unspoken oath. The channel captured it subtly. A black and white photo of boots in snow. Caption. Echoes eternal. Dad taught me to tune the strings of the heart. Tributes flooded. Covers by subs worldwide. A GoFundMe for queer youth in Mark's name that hit 6 figures overnight. Grief was a thief. Stealing sleep and sparking fights. Dylan lashing at Ethan over forgotten laundry. Ethan retreating to the mill when words turned sharp. You're pulling away, Dylan accused one blizzard night. The apartment radiator clanking like accusations. Ethan sighed. Snow melting in his hair. I'm here. But you're haunting him. Dad's ghost in every corner. Truth sliced. Dylan had clung to the Harlan house. Unwilling to sell. The garage a shrine to oil stains and half-fixed Fords. Therapy unpacked it. Survivor's guilt. The queer kid's fear of abandonment amplified by loss. Ethan joined sessions. Their love therapy too. Date nights at the diner. Ethan's foot hooking Dylan's under the booth. Laughter thawing the freeze. Spring unfurled tentative. Dogwoods blushing pink along the Scioto. Mirroring Dylan's slow bloom. The channel evolved. Echoes Collective. A platform for rural queer voices. Vlogs from Ohio farms. Poetry slams in barns. Mark's old truck bed as stage for live sessions. Dylan and Ethan co-hosted. Their chemistry electric on camera. Off it a deliberate dance. Therapy check-ins. No lies packs etched in journals. Betrayal scar faded to silver. Ethan's Nashville offers declined for local gigs. Dylan's confidence surging in songwriting that wove loss into light. One track, Garage Hymns, went viral, acoustic ode to Mark. Lyrics of wrenches and whispers. Ethan's harmonies a heartbeat underneath. Critics in Rolling Stone called it the queer Springsteen anthem America needed. But Dylan cherished the comment from an Elmwood sub. Heard this at my dad's shop. Came out to him today. Thanks, man. Yet conflict lingered, insidious as rust. Ethan's impatience bubbled. We're stagnating here, babe. Chicago's calling. Real stages. Dylan bristled. The old fear flaring. Abandonment. The sail adrift. Arguments escalated. Words like selfish and stuck hurled in the apartment's confines. The breaking point came midsummer. A festival invite to Pride in San Francisco headliner slot for Echoes. Come with, Ethan pleaded over breakfast. Tickets in hand. Dylan stared at his coffee. Mark's recliner looming in memory. Can't leave it all, the house. The legacy. Ethan's face fell. Chair scraping back. Legacy's chains if you let it be. I'm not your anchor. I'm your partner. He stormed out. Drums echoing from the mill that night. A solo set that screamed frustration. Dylan drove to the bridge that dusk. The same rusted span from his brink. River lazy now under sunset gold. He didn't teeter progress but sat on the hood, guitar in lap, strumming fragments of doubt. The phone buzzed. A video from Ethan, raw and rain-streaked, posted publicly. For Dylan, our bridge, not my burden. It was their duet, remixed with Mark's voiceover from old home tapes, gruff advice on engines and endurance, ending in Ethan's plea, build with me, not against. Views climbed as Dylan watched, tears blurring the screen, the hook of home and heart colliding. He called, voice small. I'm scared of flying too. Ethan arrived breathless, climbing onto the hood, their bodies aligning like puzzle edges. Then we'll crash together. But fly we must. The kiss was firecracker fierce, bodies tumbling into the truck bed, stars wheeling above as they reclaimed each other, slow, sacred. The rivers whisper absolution. The resolution wove through autumn's amber, decisions distilled in dawn talks over diner hash. They sold the Harlan house not to developers, but a young queer couple starting a community center, the garage reborn as workshop for art and repair. Dylan packed Mark's tools last, a wrench in his pocket talisman, the ache softening to echo. Echoes hit the road, a van tour of Heartland prides, stages from Toledo to Tulsa, Dylan's voice bolder, Ethan's beats a thunderous love letter. Subscribers became family, meet and greets in barns, stories swapped like currency. Back in Elmwood for holidays, the town embraced, Mayor's Key for their ally work, Jake's wedding where Dylan officiated, toasting to bridges unburned. Their love matured, humanistic in its hum, fights over dishes dissolving in dishwater splashes, lazy Sundays with Ethan's head in Dylan's lap, guitar strings humming lullabies. No grand bi-tragic finale, but a quiet triumph. Wedding under that crooked oak, Mark's plot blooming wildflowers, vows exchanged with a crowd of rainbow pins and overalls. In echoes and silences, Dylan promised, ring simple silver etched with a clef. Ethan grinned, crooked as ever. And every note between, the channel chronicled it, a finale video, faces full, Mark's photo framed, from secret to symphony. Thanks for listening. Views crested millions, but the real measure was the mail. Letters from kids in cornfields, coming out because Dylan did. Years folded forward, echoes a non-profit empire, scholarships in Mark's name, residencies for rural artists. Dylan and Ethan adopted a scrappy rescue pup named Harlan. Their apartment traded for a farmhouse on the river's bend, mill preserved as studio. Betrayals became backstory, conflicts compost for growth, the humanistic heart, love as verb, messy and mending. On quiet nights, Dylan strums by the window, Ethan drumming soft on his knee, the Scioto singing along. No tears now, but the memory of them. A bridge crossed, a father found, a son unchained. Epilogue whispers in the wind off the Scioto. 5 years on, the farmhouse lights a beacon for lost souls. Dylan's channel evolved to podcast streams, hosts weekly, voices from the margins, Mark's wrench a paperweight on the desk, etched now with donor names. Ethan's solo album dropped last spring, Sailor's Return, dedications to the anchor who taught me to drop. They tour less, roots deepening, community theater directing queer retells of Steinbeck, garden plots yielding tomatoes for potlucks where Elmwood elders swap cancer survivor tales with trans teens. One crisp October eve, as harvest moon rises fat and forgiving, Dylan uncovers a dusty hard drive in the attic. Mark's, labeled for when I'm gone. Heart stuttering, he plugs it in. Ethan curling close on the couch, pup at their feet. Files bloom, voicemails to mom. Grainy camcorder clips of toddler Dylan banging pots as drums. And stunning, a video from last winter. Mark alone in the garage. Voice halting but clear. If you're watching, son, means I lost the fight. But you, keep singing. Found this channel of yours, echoes. Broke my heart open. In the best way. Proud, don't cover it. Love you, kid. And that Ethan. Tell him he's family. Tears come unbidden. Dylan's sob muffled in Ethan's shirt. The pup whining sympathy. They post it. Unedited. The revelation rippling global. Headlines in Out and NPR. Mechanic's last gift. Viral coming out legacy. But the real echo is local. A vigil at the bridge. Lanterns lit for those teetering. Dylan's speech closing. Dad taught me silence can sing. If you listen. Ethan proposes a foundation expansion, Harlan Bridges. Crisis lines for rural LGBTQ+ youth. Funded by Merch and Milestones. Life arcs gentle now. Romance in the quotidian. Ethan's burnt pancakes on Sundays. Dylan's surprise serenades in the shower. Their bodies knowing each other's maps by heart. No bi-K tragedy, but a humanistic coda, love as legacy. Woven from betrayals mended. Conflicts composted. Emotions etched eternal. Under that same moon, they walk the riverbank. Hands linked. Pup bounding ahead. Think Dad's watching? Dylan murmurs. Ethan squeezes. Grin crooked. Grooving to our beat. Babe. Echoes forever. And in the quiet, the world listens.